Okay, peoples, here we go again. Right on time this time. So, start with prayer again. Hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Dear Lord, please forgive us of our sins, and please forgive those who sin against us. Give us this day our daily bread, and keep us from temptation and the unholy one. Lord, I pray that you guide my mind, you guide my words, and you guide my feet throughout my day and through this sermon. Lord, you're so good and you're so awesome. I just ask that you continue your works through me, and I speak and I pray from a position of power and fact, not hope and faith, because where hope and faith come in, that's where you falter and worry and depression follows. So, in the blood of Jesus Christ's name, I pray. Amen. All right, let's get started. Oh boy. All right, so my testimony. This is gonna be rough, y'all. All right, here we go. Born to a absolutely gorgeous, green-eyed, blonde-haired lady 31 years ago in Gwinnett County, Georgia, in Snellville. The hospital's not there in existence any longer. My mother literally skipped around all of Atlanta after being brutally abused by her significant other, my father, which I forgive and I have no bad feelings against whatsoever. 2 years of age, she picked us up and left. She was smart enough to do so. God bless her soul. She passed away 2 years ago at the age of 49 due to heart attack. And the good Lord has given me peace of mind that I know that she still lives in within me, and she's waiting for Judgment Day. I read a long time ago in Revelations that when we pass away, we don't go to heaven or hell. We wait. We go to sleep for judgment. So that's what it says in Revelations. All right, so we skipped around for years and years up until she met a guy that threw a 3-wick candle at her and smashed her tailbone. And then after that, married an individual that was also an abusive, alcoholic, drug user that did a lot of awful things. I'm not going to say all these awful things because as humans, we're not supposed to confess our sins to other humans because that leaves us up for judgment. We're supposed to give that all to God because He is the ultimate judge. So be careful when you tell people what you've done because you're leaving your life up for discretion. And so unless you're doing it in confidence and you're confiding in somebody that you love and you know there's not going to knock you over the head, don't do that to yourself. If you feel like you need to confess, go confess to somebody who's not going to be in a place of judgment, like a preacher, priest, minister, somebody who can accept it and give it to God. Okay, so like again, if you feel it necessary, give it to somebody like that, somebody who's understanding and loves you, and won't go around and be a busybody and spread the bad news. Okay, so where was I at? 12 years old. Wait a minute. I've got to get the timeline correctly. I don't think I've ever actually told my entire life story. I think she married this man when I was 7 or 8. Stayed together with him until I was around 11. I became homeless at the age of about 12 years old, and I was scattered across the streets all over the place. I was on drugs. I was stealing from grocery stores. I was stealing cigarettes and stuff. Started smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day at 9 years old, which is still a terrible habit that I'm trying to kick. And I know the good Lord will allow me to do it just as soon as I deem it fit, which is ridiculous. But habits are hard to kick. But with the Lord, anything's possible. So, and he quit saying so. I was called by the good Lord at a very, very young age. My family told me about this, and I ran from it. My favorite poem in this world is the Footprints poem. If you don't know about it, please look it up. It has to do with a man walking down the beach, the great beach of life, and there is always 2 sets of footprints. It was his and God's, and he's explaining that everything was always wonderful and everything was always great with God and him. And he started suffering trials and tribulations, and he realized, or he made the observation that he thought that he was alone, and he prayed and he cried out to God, and he asked God, why have you left me? I see only 1 set of footprints now, And it hurt him, it grieved him, and the good Lord touched his soul and told him, "Son, I've been with you your entire life, and I'm never going to leave you. So that one set of footprints that you see now is not you walking through life by yourself. It's me, God, carrying you through it." So I try to remind myself of that every day, that it's not me, it's God. It's not us, it's God that sustains our life, that keeps our hearts beating, that keeps the blood running through our veins, and keeps happiness in our hearts. We are the ones that allow negative things to happen. And the more power you give to God, the more He gives happiness and the spirit of unworry back. So after that fact, I said it again. Homeless from the ages of 12 until I was 17. I became a carpenter at a young age. I was working my butt off, actually providing for my mother and my little brother for a small stint, until I got fed up with my mother not wanting to go to work or not wanting to do anything with her life. So I left. And not 2.5 weeks later, my little brother got taken by defects. But that was God's will, and he got taken to a better place in his life. Which, little brother, Joey, I love you, bud. I need you in my life. I feel like you're being called to. And your mother loves you and misses you greatly, just like we do. Just like we all do. We all miss and love one another. And at the age of 17, at the age of 15, I was in 2 drug busts, about 6 months with one another, and didn't catch any drug charges. But one of my great friends growing up that I went to school with, his mother was a drug dealer, and it hurt me to see her handcuffed, having multiple back surgeries. I saw her in pain, and I stood up and tried to say, "The drugs are mine." And the 17 Red Dog units that are in Georgia, which means run every drug dealer out of Georgia. That's the sting operation. I don't know if it's still in existence, but it was back then. Pretty much the head guy told me to sit down and shut up. That they already got who they wanted, and me being a child, a teenager, couldn't control my mouth. Made up through a fit, and they said, "All right, well, get up." No, excuse me. They said, "What's your information?" So I'm sitting there aggravated, and I gave them my license, my ID, and I gave them my social security card, and told them where I lived, gave them my phone number, and I got asked multiple times by 6 or 7 different officers, and I got irritated, and finally I'm just like, you know what? I plead the fifth. And I heard an officer stand up from the background and say, "Oh, you plead the fifth? Get up. You're arrested." So I was arrested and got taken to juvenile. And on the way to the car in handcuffs, I snatched my hand out of the officer's arms and said, "I can walk myself." And he promptly shoved me off the 3-step porch into the ground, and then promptly jumped on my back with his knees into my kidneys, which bruised for about 3 weeks, and pulled me up by the links of my cuffs backwards and carted me to the back of his car, where I was carted off to juvenile. From that point, uh, my family didn't come pick me up. A woman named Elise Braverman did from juvenile because she felt bad. And my mother was staying with her at that point. I think she wasn't there that night, but I went directly from juvenile to this woman's house. And then we went from there to go to another drug dealer's house, and then multiple other different places. My life got really, really crazy from this point forth. I think this was the point where the Lord was calling me, and I ran, and stuff hit the fan quickly. So I'm going to try to tell this story as accurately as possible because it gets really strange really fast. This all happened within just a couple of days of one another. I think it was like 3 days. Went to juvenile, got out, went to this woman's house. We went from there to her drug dealer's house. She could pick up whatever she was wanting to smoke. Just so happens this was back in the day when there was caller IDs, and her boyfriend was calling from Monroe, Georgia, where I live now, which is just really wild how this whole thing is playing out instantaneously. This was not planned, by the way. None of this was planned. This is all just God coming through me, and I give it all back to Him. So I looked over, and I've got a really awesome memory with numbers. I actually know my driver's license number. At one point, I knew all of my kids' social security numbers. Whatever's relevant, I try to keep a steel trap in my mind with numbers. Okay, so here goes that so again. What you reap, what you sow. We went from there to her her boyfriend's brother's house where I live now, and they were drinking, and I partook, and Elise screwed up and said a wrong word in front of Phil's brother's kid, which was her boyfriend Phil. We were at his brother's house in Monroe, and Phil was already drunk. He was a little bit aggressive, kind of a drunk person too. So he snapped out and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, brother. We got to leave. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We're not trying to get you jammed up with your kid going to school and saying what you're doing at home." So his brother was like, "No, no, no. Calm down, dude. It's late at night. We're all drinking. Just calm down. Everything's fine. Just don't, at least don't say it again in front of my kid. And he's 13. He'll go to school and say something." So we're all hanging around. She says it again. Joint. Yep. Phil is not having it this time. He snapped. And we went to go. When we left, he didn't. He made us all leave. So drunk as a skunk, me and Phil were. I think I had like 3 shots of moonshine, 6 beers, a couple different mixed drinks. I was to the moon, and I was hallucinating. I was so drunk. Never been this drunk before my entire life. Which I just really regret all the poison that I put in my body up to this point. But that's okay too, because the Lord can renew your body if you pray and you believe. He can renew your body. So we're driving down the road, this little back road. I think the speed limit was like 20 or 30 miles an hour. And Elise starts popping off at the mouth and talking stupid to him, and he's drunk and screaming. And all of a sudden, he pulls up the emergency brake while we were going like 50 and a 30. And it's raining outside in a curve. And we start sliding uncontrollably. And he grabs the wheel. Phil grabs the wheel at the last second. And he straightens the car out, but not enough to where we didn't have a wreck. So we kind of like, we're going through a curve, going left. He snatched the emergency brake. We started sliding, and we went off the road on the right-hand side. He grabs the wheel, turns it far left, and we slide in the mud until we go hard right into some bushes. I freak out, completely freak out, because I had just gotten out of juvenile, like the night before or whatever, and the day before. I'm freaking out. Oh, I missed a big chunk of this story. I'll add it later. Before I went to Elise's house, I was traveling around all Gainesville with 2 guys that were panhandling to buy crack. And they wound up borrowing all of my money, lied to me, told me that they're going to give me a place to live and some medication for my abscessed tooth at that point at 15 years old. And then drove me in the middle of nowhere and made me smoke crack because they told me that, oh, you've been, hanging out with us all day, but you haven't done nothing with us. And we're going to make sure you're not the cops. So they drove me out in the middle of nowhere where I didn't know where I was at and was like, here, you're going to hit this. And it was just like, oh, great. So I'm smoking crack for the first time at 15 years old. So anyways, it's made me who I am. It's humbled me. It's only built character. Not proud of the things that I've done, but I'm proud of my Father that has kept me here to tell the tale. So moving forward, the accident happens. I jump out of the car, and like a dum-dum, 15 years old, and the car is sitting at more than a 45-degree angle, like almost vertical, in some briars. I flip out and try to push the car up and like, get in the car and hit reverse. And they're like, dude, you're not going to move this car. And I just like, oh, well, great. So what do we do now? And they're screaming, yelling at each other. And we start walking down the road. And it's not even a minute later, an SUV rolls around, stops in the middle of the road and says, hey, do y'all need help? What happened? And Phil's screaming, blessing them out, cussing. No, we don't need any effing help, blah, 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 blah. And so the cops got called. And so not even a minute after that, because the Monroe Police Department was probably only half a mile down the street. I live in Monroe right now, and it's a big town, but it's a small town at the same time. If you're living in town, it's a small town. So this kind of makes sense now why the cops showed up so fast. So I seen blue lights from both directions, and I hot-tailed it off into the woods. And they're like, where are you going? I'm like, well, y'all aren't going to jail because of contributing to delinquency of a minor. So I dipped off into the woods, and pouring down rain the entire time. I'm hanging out in the woods, and we got far enough down the road where I couldn't see the accident, but I could still see the blue lights. Well, then I started to hear dogs, and I'm thinking, oh no, they done called the dogs on me. So I climbed up a pine tree that didn't have any branches for about 20 feet. Bear hugged it, went all the way up the tree and hung out on a limb until I thought I saw the police lights went away. I can probably contribute the longer wait time for me sitting in the woods to all the alcohol and the hallucinating, from the moonshine. So I waited long enough to where I thought everything was safe. Climbed back down the tree, didn't hear any more dogs or whatnot. Went back to the accident scene, and the car was gone. So I was stranded in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere, Monroe, Georgia. Didn't have no one to call, didn't have a phone, didn't have nothing. Began walking down the street, went to the nearest gas station, and another drug dealer pops up, and I just so happened to remember the number. This plays out earlier into my story from the caller ID, sitting at the drug dealer's house, picking up the pot that Elise got caught with. That's why they were gone, and the car was gone. So they had gotten caught with the bag of pot. And I called Phil's brother. Just happened to remember the number on the caller ID. Called him up. I said, "What's going on? Where'd they go? I'm stranded." And he goes, "Well, I don't know what to tell you other than if you can get a ride to my house, you can spend the night." But they went to jail for that bag of pot. And I said, "Great." So the next person that I saw was a black guy with a really nice old school Caprice with some really big rims. Obviously a drug dealer back in those days. Begged him for a ride, and he goes, "Man, you going through it, huh?" So I said, "Yeah, I need a ride to this place. Can you help me out?" And he goes, "Yeah, man, absolutely, get in." So he drops me off at Phil's brother's house. I spent the night. The next day, we go to pick up Phil from jail, bonded him out or whatever. Went to go get Elise, and her drug dealer from the day before, which is her old boyfriend, had bonded her out, which really made Phil mad. All right, moving forward, we're going to go ahead and skip from 15 years old now to 17 and a half. A lot of more bad stuff happened in between time, but I just feel like that was a really crazy couple of days that I went through. That I can't fabricate this. It's real. I went through this. It's crazy. Wild stuff. 17 and a half, I had to go to court for the crap that I got myself into at one of those drug busts. Just a simple, petty little charge, disorderly conduct. I mouthed off to a cop. They couldn't charge me with anything else. I didn't break any other laws. Told the state that I'm homeless, that y'all need to do something with me. So they put me in a group home for a couple of weeks, which I ran away from because I felt like my mom needed me. So I ran away and went to go help my mom out of a tight spot. She was living with some people she shouldn't have been. And my cousin, who was running the streets and doing bad, was with a guy named MacGyver, her drug dealer, whatever. And they picked me up for a small stint. I think that was part of one of the other drug busts. That was the second drug bust within 6 months of each other. That was the second drug bust. So I'm kind of messing the story up. But my cousin can give testimony to this. She went through it. She was in the drug bust with me. I was doing some bad drugs back then, and came out unscathed. I walked from a meth bust, where my cousin did not. Bless her soul. She went to prison. Turned her life around though, and is in ministry as well. Been wanting to be active in my life, and I've just been kind of doing me. 17 and a half, I turned it around. With God's help, didn't even realizing, again, the Footprints poem, that God had carried me through all of this. I thought I was doing it on my own. I turned my eyes away from God at a young age, about 9, 10 years old, praying as hard as I could in the car, watching my stepdad beat the crap out of her. He kicked her so hard in front of me while I was praying, she threw up in the front yard. And I pretty much looked up at God and looked up in the sky while I was praying, and I stopped praying and gave him the finger, which I really regret. But again, I needed all this for my testimony, and I needed it for me to build character. I needed to be who I am today. So 17 and a half, again, I got put in a foster home, a loving, kind, caring foster home. Mike and Sharon Samples in Oakwood, Georgia. You get all the credit in the world. I only had 6 months to go. They allowed me to stay in their beautiful home, which I got to see them transition from a smaller home into a much bigger, more beautiful home, not too far away, still in Hall County, Georgia, where I pretty much grew up, one county away from Gwinnett. Lots of awesome stuff. Those people taught me a lot of good things. They allowed me to kind of be who I am, or who I was back then. I came back to Christ for a small stint at 17 years old in Black Shear Place Baptist Church out in Oakwood, Georgia. I cried. I felt the Spirit of the Lord come through me. and I cried on my hands and knees, crawling to the altar, begging for forgiveness and enlightenment and a better journey. Life still got crazy from that point, and God wasn't done with me because I turned my back on God again. I got my GED within 6 months. I worked at John Harrison Hotch Library at Gainesville State College in Gainesville, Georgia, in Oakwood. In Oakwood, Georgia, next to Gainesville. It's Gainesville State College. I'm sure back in the day it was probably Gainesville, but the city limits probably changed. Anyways, regardless. Went to technical college for introduction to microcomputers. Turned out to be a welder. I received a diploma in welding and joining technology at a little over the age of 18. So I began my profession as a certified welder in all positions, structural and 6G pipe certified. Was trained with a torch, trained with all other manual forms of welding in stainless and aluminum, and been doing it for 14 years ever since. Met my first wife in technical college, which lasted 4 years. We had 2 beautiful children, which I pay child support for now and have not seen in probably 7 or 8 years or so, something like that. Probably get my math wrong here, which I do miss them terribly. You can't turn off being a dad, but I know that they're being well taken care of because the good Lord takes care of everyone. So I'm doing what I can as far as money is concerned, and I know that one day they will be back in my life, and things will be rebuilt and be repaired, and whatever the locusts have eaten will be given back. Got a divorce, went to prison, still didn't get it right. Had 2 more kids with another beautiful soul that I still have in my life. It's just all my testimony. It's all relevant. I think I said in my last video that I had a mental breakdown 3 weeks ago. I think that was the 3rd time that the good Lord called me. And if the good Lord calls you, do not deny him 3 times, because you're only messing yourself out of your blessing. I'll give more of my backstory if you want to ask. I've literally learned how to do a plethora of different things. I started out as a carpenter, turned into a welder and a musician. I'm now an inventor, a minister, preacher, or what have you. I know how to work on HVAC components. I know how to work on cars. I know how to work on just about anything. With God's help, anything is possible. So I pray to my Father in heaven every time I do something where I feel like I might have a doubt in myself. And he gives me the confidence and sends leagues of angels to make miracles happen right in front of me. Because again, I pray like Jesus did. I know that I didn't have a dad growing up, so I look at God as my ultimate father. And I'm a very blessed man, extraordinarily blessed man. I have to get my IRS tax ID set up. One of the people in the neighborhood got their trailer got condemned recently, and the good Lord sent them some angels in human form to fix their trailer and build them new porches. And I went down yesterday to go talk with them, and they informed me that if I'm going to be doing anything with this channel, I need to immediately go and set up an IRS tax ID for a nonprofit organization church, which I'm going to be completely see-through. I can show. I'll make sure and prove all of this. I'm going to start a banking account that I'm not going to be able to touch. It's going to be sealed and out of my hands. Even if I have to go to other people or something, just to prove it. I want this to all go back to God, every bit of it. I want to build big churches. I want to build old folks' homes. I want to build apartment complexes, and I want to do Christian ministries, children's preschools, and private Christian academies. But I want these to be either low cost or free, and I want the money from the ministries to fuel everything. So I know that God is going to let this happen, because this is from God. And I don't think this has been done before. So this is amazing. This is really, really awesome. Jesus came for the sinners, and he came for the wrongdoers. He didn't come for the saints. He didn't come for the just and the people that go to church every Sunday. So I'm trying to do God's work, and I'm trying to help every soul that comes across me that God wants to help. I'm never going to turn my face away from anyone, period. Because he never turned his away from me, and I turned mine away from him. We're supposed to forgive as Christians 7,777 times and 7,777 times more. Well, I say forgive more because God will always forgive you no matter what you do, and all sin is looked at the same in his eyes. So from now I'm going to go. I can quit saying so. I'll work on this, I promise. This is my second go at this. I'm going to go to the Holy Bible. We're going to go to Proverbs, and I'm going to end it with this because I got to go to work soon. Proverbs. Oops, pass it. And I will get quicker at this as well. I literally have not been to church in months. The last time I did go to church, it was just a couple of times. Before that, it was years. So, anyways, I'll start using anyways. It's probably not any better. Slow speech. I might have an issue here. Proverbs. There it is. Pass it again. These little tabs are handy. Today is the 21st. See if I can get a little translation. And again, I don't practice this stuff. This is all freehand, freelance. And it's just coming out of me. So, Bible. Something just fell out. Virginia M. Ford. You need your Bible. I know you're in the state of Virginia. The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. As the rivers of water, he turneth it whithersoever he will. Okay, so the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. So the Lord makes kings as the rivers of water. So the Lord will make people kings as rivers of water. So a lot. He turneth it whithersoever he will. So the Lord directs kings. That's what that means. The Lord directs kings' minds and thoughts and hearts. Every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord pondereth the hearts. So God gave us the spirit of free will, and he pondereth upon that, is what that tells me. It says every way of a man is right in his own eyes. We all think that we do right. We all do. We all think that we're doing right, even if we're doing wrong. But the Lord pondereth the hearts. So the Lord made us to wonder about us. What's that saying? To do justice and judgment is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. So do right. And if you see somebody doing wrong, don't judge them necessarily, but let them know that there's a better way. I think that's what that says. To do justice and judgment is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. So don't sacrifice anything. The Lord doesn't want you to sacrifice anything. He wants you to have what you want to have. Your dreams, the Lord wants you to have. So persevere and endure. Because if you suffer for a night, you'll be blessed in the morning. A high look and a proud heart, and the plowing of the wicked is sin. So remove your proudness. Remove your prideful heart. Because what you reap is what you sow. And that's wicked in the eyes, and that is sin to the Lord. The thoughts of the diligent tend only to pretentiousness. The thoughts of the diligent tend only to pretentiousness, but of everyone that is hasty, only to want. So be diligent with the way that you do things, and be plentiful. But of everyone that is hasty, only to want. So don't be too quick to want things. Don't be too quick to grab things, because you might be taken away from somebody else, or you might be taking the wrong thing. The robbery of the wicked shall destroy them, because they refuse to do judgment. The robbery of the wicked shall destroy them, because they refuse to do judgment. I think I just said that. I think I just said the other half of that. That's cool. The way of man is froward and strange, but as for the pure, his work is right. Again, I think I said this before. If you're to judge a man, do not judge him by his appearance, judge him by his works. It is better to dwell in a corner of the housetop than with a brawling woman in a wide house. So, it is better to dwell in a corner of the housetop than with a brawling woman in a wide house. Okay, this tells me, it's just screaming to me that if your spouse likes to argue, do it inside. Don't let everybody know your business. Do your arguing inside. Okay, so it's better to dwell in the corner of a housetop in your house than with a brawling woman in a wide house where everybody can hear you. The soul of the wicked desireth evil. His neighbor findeth no favor in his eyes. It goes along with whatever I was saying about the wicked. So the soul of the wicked desire evil. You can judge a man by his works, not his appearance. His neighbor find no favor in his eyes. So the wicked are pretty much, they're scorned. They don't want to be. They're not looked at in any kind of good way, and you can pretty much feel them out. When the scorner is punished, the simple is made wise, and when the wise is instructed, he receiveth knowledge. So I can stop saying so. When the scorner is punished, when the mocker is punished, is another word to say scorner, or the person that is being hard on somebody else, the simple is made wise. So knowledge will increase if you try to find the simplicity in the heart of God. He receiveth knowledge. The righteous man wisely considereth. Hey, Isabel, you know where Anthony lives? Message him and ask him for his address and go grab him real quick. I'm not gonna have enough time to do my ministry and go pick him up and just go grab him, come back, grab me, and I'm going to work. Oh boy, I'm gonna have to end this and have to continue it on later on. This is a really big proverb. All right, well, this was at Proverbs 21. I'm so sorry, everybody. I lost time. I should have made more time earlier. Some stuff happened earlier today that kind of drew some time out. So, but God always makes time at God's speed. So maybe I'm not going to find the right words to hit the right people with the right meanings right now, per se. Mm-hmm. So I love you, Christian people, God's people. I love you so much, and God loves you. Talk to you soon. Please don't forget to subscribe and like, because you're doing it for God. See y'all soon.